Ita Buttrose, welcome to Straight Talk.
Thank you.
It's such an honour for me, seriously, to be sitting here in front of you, to have someone like you on my podcast. And I've had some great guests on my podcast, but Ita Buttrose is going to go down as one of the great ones.
Well, I hope so.
I'm definitely, from my point of view, from my experience point of view, definitely. And actually, not too long ago, only a few months ago, John Laws was sitting opposite me in the same podcast. And of course, we've lost Lawsy this weekend. This is a Monday, and we lost John yesterday. And another acquaintance, both of ours, Graham Richardson, also passed away on the weekend. How do you feel about John Laws and passing away?
I feel very sad about John because I knew him well, and I was at 2UE when he was at 2UE. And in fact, he was responsible for me going into radio in the first place. So I was editor-in-chief of the 2 Telegraphs here in Sydney, and John rang and asked me if I'd fill in for him. He had to go and have a tonsil an operation on his throat. And I said to him, I remember saying to him, "Are you sure that I'd be okay?" Because I hadn't thought of radio. And he said, "You'll be fine." And so I filled in for him for 6 weeks. And when he returned, 2E offered me the afternoon show. That's how I got started. If it hadn't been for John, I never would have thought of radio.
Had you done radio at all?
No, I'm just a print person.
You just went in cold?
I went in cold.
What, did they give you a script or something? Is there something to talk to?
No, there's no scripts in radio.
No. So where did you get that confidence from to be able to do that type of thing? As far as I remember, you've always been confident, but where do you get that from?
My brothers, all 3 of them, used to say that I owe my success to them. So I think I got the oomph that I have, or the competitiveness that I have, from my brothers. I do think they were helpful.
Do you mind if I go back to that period with your brothers? Where did you grow up?
In Parsley Bay, which is in Vaucluse.
Parsley Bay. And you had 3 brothers. Did you have a sister as well?
No, just 3 brothers and me.
The youngest?
I'm the second. I'm second eldest.
Second eldest.
Yeah.
And your parents, what were they doing at the time?
Mum used to work in public relations, and Dad was a journalist. He probably was at the ABC, or he's working for Frank Packer.
So your dad was a journalist. So is that where you got your journalist instincts?
All my parents' friends were journalists, artists, photographers. I used to look at them as you used to look at your parents' parties. And I think these people know how to live. They all have views. They have they have a zest for life. I thought they're wonderful. And my father was my hero. And so I thought, and I loved writing. So it was just natural for me to become a journalist.
So when you're a young person, and I remember having sort of similar experiences, but with my parents. But when you're a young person and you're at a party they might be holding, and they have their friends over, and you might have some family as well coming along to that, and little kids, young kids, teenagers even, that for that matter, are watching, observing their parents, observing the music, observing the food, observing the interactions. Maybe they have a little bit of a dance or something like that. What are the impressions that you still have in your mind from those days when you watched your parents, let's call it entertaining, and the types of people that are entertaining?
They had fun. They had fun. They enjoyed each other's companies. So they just knew how to live.
Yeah, but do you think today that that's sort of missing?
Well, I don't think people have the sort of parties that my parents used to have. They don't. There seems to be a lack of asking people over for dinner in modern Australia. I think we all go to restaurants. That's sweeping. That's a very generalisation, isn't it? But I don't think older people, which I classify my parents as, entertain at home anymore.
Is it because we didn't have choices back then, though? We didn't have many restaurants to go to, or the accessibility of restaurants like we do today, or even social media making them famous?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think we've just lost contact with one another. I think it's a general thing. You can live in a suburb and you can walk in the morning and you can say hello to people and they don't say hello back. Whereas when I was a kid, people in our street were kids and dogs, And everybody said hello. Everybody used to call in to each other.
And just so I could just make a comment in relation to you living in Parsley Bay, which is in Vaucluse. If you go back to when you were a kid, and it's not that long ago, Vaucluse was not as it is today.
No.
It was a long way from everywhere.
It was a long way from anywhere. And my mother used to tell me that harbourside living lost its appeal once the Japanese submarines came into Sydney harbour during World War II. And so people didn't want to live near the harbour because of the threat of invasion, I suppose. So that's when Burwood and Strathfield and Pymble and Killara became popular. And it was, I think it was probably towards the end of the 50s that Vaucluse suddenly became desirable again.
Yes, I remember, because I remember my mother was in Mossman, and she said to me Mossman was preferred to Vaucluse because it was closer to the city, much closer to the city. You had the Harbour Bridge, of course, and Vaucluse was not a desired environment in terms of being too far away, in terms of distance from everything.
Yeah, it was a bit of a hike.
Yeah.
So we had to get a small bus from Parsley Bay to Rose Bay, and then you get the tram to town.
Yeah.
So there were two modes of transport you had to get.
So Ida's, a young woman in her 20s. Did you go to university or somewhere like that to learn journalism, or you just went straight into it? How did it
straight in? Well, university degrees were not encouraged by journalists in those days. In fact, university graduates are viewed with some kind of suspicion. You learnt on the job, and there were lectures that you had to attend when you were training. You had to have shorthand or typing, but I'd gone to business college when I left school, and I got those skills. And that's the way it was. You went out with senior journalists. You learnt on the job.
Your first job, though, who and how did you get it? Who was it with, and how did you get it?
Oh, my first job was a copy girl on the Australian Women's Weekly.
What is a copy girl?
It's a very low way to start. It's the lowest way you can start, I think. You run messages and you make tea and coffee. So I used to make tea and coffee for 40 people. And I was marked out as a copy girl to watch. I learnt years later when I was editor. Because I'd brought a tea towel in to wipe up the teacups and mugs, and no copy girl or boy had ever thought to do that before. So you never know when you're making a good first impression, but I certainly did, unbeknown to me.
Is that something that you might have learned from your upbringing with your family, though, with your parents?
Well, it's just practical. I mean, you can't just keep putting dripping cups on the shelves, can you? It's just a practical thing to do. Yeah, and I think I am very practical.
And there probably weren't any dishwashers at the time where they were drying your
cups.
Oh,
no, and Sir Frank wouldn't have given us a dishwasher. He ran a mean, lean organisation.
Is that right?
Yeah.
We're talking about Sir Frank Packer.
You had to, that's right, the boss of Consolidated Press, which owned the Women's Weekly and the two Telegraphs. And you had to, if you wanted a new biro, for instance, you had to send back the dead biro. If you didn't send back the dead biro, you didn't get a new biro.
Are you serious? So they wanted to check the ink in the tube.
They wanted to make sure that it was dead.
Well, I quite like that. This sounds crazy, but I quite like that. That's not a bad discipline, especially now that you're retelling that story. But the fact that you're retelling it must have actually sunk into you during that period. No, but it must have. And he probably didn't care that much about it, but he did care about it. Then that he wanted that to be the sort of sense in the joint. Let's be frugal. Let's be let's not spend money when we don't need to spend money. And I quite like that.
Well, sometimes on the third floor where the general staff was, they had to sit on crates that weren't enough chairs. No one complained, and that's the way it was.
Was that it's not up at Park Street where they are now,
yes,
is it? The same building?
Yes, same building.
Where they were, sorry.
Where they were.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So that's crazy. So you were working for Sir Frank Packer. You worked for Consolidated Press Holdings Limited, I think it was probably called at the time. You were a copy girl. Just give us a quick thumbnail sketch how you got from there to you ultimately became the editor. Well, the women's
editor, the Telegraph Women's Pages was very close to the Women's Weekly. And so the women's editor was looking for a new secretary. And because I had shorthand and typing, I applied for that job and I got it. But my main reason for going there was to get closer to my goal of becoming a journalist. So I used to come in on weekends and go out with senior journalists. I would write paragraphs and submit them to the editor. And
Uninvited?
Yes.
Wow.
So I think I drove them mad with my enthusiasm. So by the time I was 16, they offered me a cadetship, which was very early to get it. But I was on my way.
Were you say that's pretty determined for a young person, male or female, but that's a pretty determined person. Like
I'm very determined. Haven't you noticed?
I have. Well, I know that, but were you always like that as a kid too? Was that a hallmark of you?
Well, when I got married at 21, I remember Dad saying to my husband-to-be, "You're marrying a very independent woman." And I think Dad was warning him that I was an independent woman and I was a determined woman.
Consciously? Were you consciously independent as a woman? Were you consciously thinking to yourself?
No, I was survival. I think it was survival. My parents used to brawl a lot, and so I felt the best way to look after me was to be independent and get myself a job and earn money and look after myself. And that's what I did at 15.
Do you remember when and who was it that said to you, "Would you like the editor's job"?
No, I can't remember. When I went overseas the first time, I went down to say goodbye to Sir Frank. By now I was graded. I was a graded journalist, and I was women's editor of the 2 Telegraphs. And I went down to say goodbye to Sir Frank, and he said he hoped I'd come back because he had me in mind for the editorship of the Australian Women's Weekly, and that became my goal.
What do you mean he?
Well, they put the thought in my head, and I thought,
it's possible.
I'd like that. I'd like that. I want to run the weekly. When it was a weekly, it was the mightiest magazine in the world. It's lost a bit of its edge now because it's a monthly, and the bean counters have got in and they're
trimmed all the costs.
They're screwing up the budgets. So, but I worked in magazines in their heyday, the glory days. It was fantastic. And the weekly was a fantastic magazine to edit.
So I think it would be good, especially for our younger audience, to give us a bit of a picture of what do you mean by the heyday of magazines, because a lot of younger people don't even ever see a magazine today. They wouldn't see a magazine. The magazines, Australian magazine scene was, I don't know about compared to the rest of the world, for me anyway, as a young person, was pretty full on. I had a girlfriend, she would be reading Cleo and Cosmopolitan and Vogue and Women's Weekly. And that was, my mum would always had Women's Weekly. Like, maybe you could paint a picture as to why it was one of the best.
Well, I always thought that women regarded a magazine as a friend. So I think they thought of the weekly as a friend. And there were so many magazines. There were magazines for teenagers, magazines for older than that, magazines for older than that. The weekly was for all women, 14 and over. And it used to have 45% of all women 14 and over in Australia in its readership.
Wow.
Yes, I know, it was very powerful. It went into 1 in 4 homes. But, then we saw gaps in the market. That's how Cleo came about and the Australian version of Cosmopolitan. New magazines were launched to fill the gaps. Everybody had a magazine. You see girls reading them on the bus, on the tram, on the train. It was, and advertisers loved them. So they made a lot of money. We made a lot of money out of the weekly. We made a lot of money out of Cleo. We made a lot of money out of one-shots. One-shots are specialised editions of certain aspects of magazines. So, for instance, Chinese cooking class cookbook. We couldn't print enough of that. Everybody loved it. Dinner party cookbook. Beautiful Australia. The weekly used to run full-page pictures of Australian scenes, and so we produced Beautiful Australia in a one-shot, and it sold like hotcakes.
So as an editor, what what is the editor's role in those environments? I mean, you're not writing the articles. You may write an article here, but what is the editor's role? Like, say, on a weekly basis, what would you do when you got them all in the office on a Monday morning and got them all, sat everyone around the table? What happens?
You discuss stories and you see what everybody was doing. You work 6 weeks ahead on 6 issues at a time, and you'd be across the editorials, because a magazine is a balanced thing. You can't have too much humour. You can't have too much sadness. You've got to have a mix of it. It's all to do with the balance, and that's the skill of the editor. So you'd help design the magazine. The artist hadn't come into their own by that point, so the editor used to do a lot of the planning in the design sense, and you'd work out where things would go. You start with nothing, and then you start to fill the pages up, and that includes advertising. And then you look at it and you think, no, it's missing an emotion. I think we need to challenge them. So you drop something else in. And then you've got to choose the cover. And the cover is always difficult because it's got to compel people to pick it up. And so I used to walk up and down looking at the pictures that I might use, thinking, is it saying you need me? Is it saying buy me? Is it saying pick me up? And if it didn't make the cover.
The cover, it seems to me, to be one of the most important parts of it, though. And the headline.
Well, the color is important. You can make a mistake with color. I once used yellow. Don't use yellow. That's not good. But clear blue, cyan, as we call it, or magenta, the really bright pink, red, those sorts of colors, they grab you. You can't go by it. But the trick is to make the cover follow people. So it's all to do with the position of the person's eyes as well.
How do you mean to follow people? How do you mean?
Well, you just know as an editor what you're looking for. It's got to, you look back and you think, yes, it's still with me. It's still with me. It follows you.
As you walk past.
Yeah, it follows.
That's interesting, because of those days people would have bought a lot of magazines out of newsagents, which...
Well, it was very competitive. The Women's Day, the Women's Weekly, and New Idea. We were fiercely competitive. We always tried to outdo the other one.
So Women's Weekly was CPH. Women's Day, who was that?
That was, God, I don't know anymore.
But it was a competitor anyway.
Fairfax.
Down
that way.
New Idea, who was that?
Rupert.
That was Murdoch.
Yeah.
Right. So the three of you are all competing for pretty much the same demographic, and obviously the same advertisers.
Fierce. Yes, food. We all personalities, emotional pieces, food, books. You name it. We all had a similar mix, but I think the Weekly did it better.
One of the things that I've always wanted to ask somebody, and I'm glad you're here because I'm going to get the opportunity to ask you this, is when I was about 17, 18, my girlfriend used to get, at the time, the Cleo magazine. And she always wanted me to complete these quizzes about partner, what you know about your partner type of thing, and I've many years since I've thought about it, I thought, who was the person who got this? Because it was very clever. Like, her and all her friends were like wedded to this stuff, and they were testing their boyfriends with a series of questions, and they used to give you a compatibility score down the bottom, right down the end. Do you ever remember where that idea came from?
They used to churn. Somebody used to churn them out, and we put it. It's in the mix. In the mix of the editorial, you think we'll drop one of these in, because women are always trying to work out what the bloke in their life is like.
Yeah.
And so if you're a younger woman and you think you're falling in love, you just got to make sure you're compatible. We're suckers for those sorts of things. Women are suckers for those.
So you're sort of like got to be a bit of a semi-psychologist in some respects, because like you got to know what was your biggest audience or biggest
Yes, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you score in the quiz. If you're in love, you're in love.
Yeah. But like all my mates used to tell me the same thing. We used to all sort of have a laugh about it because they'd all say, "Oh, I had to go through that Cleo compatibility thing," and like a 17, 18-year-old, it's. I think people too are curious as to, oh, here's someone's giving me this opportunity to actually go into Mark's head and find out what he actually thinks about me, and to see whether or not we have some sort of similar likes. And I used to think to myself at the time, this is a very good way of selling a magazine. She would buy it as soon as that, and that would come out like every 3 months. One of those, like you'd sort of just roll it out every
Yes.
3 months. And I did the same quiz. I felt like at least 6 or 7 times. I actually ended up marrying her and divorcing her, and it didn't work out that well, obviously. The compatibility, unless I changed, which is potentially quite a chance. So after leaving editorial at Women's Weekly, where did you go after that? What was your next move?
Well, I started Cleo before I went to the Weekly. So Cleo was my stepping stone to the Weekly.
Right.
And then Rupert Murdoch rang and asked me to lunch. And he offered me the job of editor-in-chief of the Daily and Sunday Telegraphs, which Sir Frank had originally owned. And they were the papers on which I trained. And Rupert also offered me a directorship of News Limited. They'd never had a woman before. And he offered me a trip to London for Channel 10, which he then owned, to cover the wedding of Charles and Di. Well, it was such a grab bag of wonderful things. And I thought, to be editor-in-chief of the papers on which I trained, that would be quite something. So I accepted his offer.
Who was running CPH then? Was it Kerry running Consolidated Press Holdings, or was Sir Frank still around?
No, Sir Frank had died.
Right, so Kerry was in charge.
He died about 2 years before we. No, he must have been around when it started Cleo. I'm just thinking, he died around about the time we launched Cleo.
So, and then when you got the offer from Rupert, was Kerry in charge of the magazines?
He was.
Yes. So.
And he wasn't happy.
I was going to say.
No, he wasn't
having
happy
known Kerry and been in business for a long time,
No.
Something like that going to Rupert would have been.
But the thing was, I felt that I was looking for a new challenge. And if you think back that I'd achieved a great deal and I was still very young. I think I was 38 when I accepted Rupert's offer. So I wanted to do more. I wanted to challenge myself more. And every time someone offered me something, Kerry said no, because he wanted me to stay running the Women's Weekly. And I felt that I could run the Women's Weekly, but still do more. So somebody suggested I could host the Today Show. Kerry said no. Then it was 60 Minutes. Kerry said no. Then Shirley Conran wanted me to edit and wanted me to write the Australian version of her book, which I think was called Every Woman. It's such a long time ago. Kerry said no. Every time someone offered me something, he said no. So I was feeling frustrated and searching for this new challenge when Rupert came along. And so I was ripe for an offer. And I took it.
Do you remember the conversation with Kerry when you said, "Look, I'm going to take this offer"?
He was fine. He was fine to my face, but I told after I left, he went ballistic, as only he can.
Oh my God, that would have been better not to be there. Between the two, Rupert and Kerry, of course, Rupert's still alive and Kerry's not, so maybe this could help form your answer. But was there one more charming than the other, do you think?
Oh, Kerry had a great charm, and he had a great curiosity, and he had a wonderful sense of humour. I'm sure Rupert has all these things, but they were never as apparent as they were with Kerry.
That's interesting. And Kerry, I think, I've only met Rupert a few times, but Kerry was always very charming and warm, I felt. Well, sometimes he was the opposite.
Everybody liked working for him.
Yeah, because
it was a very happy time.
He was interested in what you did too.
Oh, he was curious about what we did. All men were curious about what we did because women were changing, women's liberation was coming along, and nobody quite knew where we were all headed. We just know that the world was changing and women were changing dramatically. And so men were very interested. Kerry used to come along and talk to the fashion editor, a great girl called Rosina Casey. And she'd have clothes out on the racks in her room. And Kerry would say, "Do you think women will really wear that?" "Yes, I do, Mr. Packer." "But will they like it?" "Yes, of course they will, Mr. Packer." So things like that. He couldn't believe this new progressive woman that we said Cleo was for.
It's funny, during the 70s and 80s, probably more so the 70s, one of the things I had to do at university is in my degree is I had to do a subject called Women in Society. It became like the University of New South Wales was trying to be progressive and just don't want to turn out young lawyers, etc., who don't know anything about anything else other than the law. So you had to choose some subjects, and one of the ones I had to choose, I had the choice of, was called Women's Society. And anyway, our lecturer was Dr. Anne Summers, and yes, and Anne had written a book called I'll never forget it. Now that I'm sitting here talking to you, but it was called Damned Whores and God's Police.
Yes.
And it was during the rise, let's call it quite a sharp rise of feminism in the world, particularly here in Australia and near Australia as well. And I was sort of confronted by the fact that I had to read this book and sit an exam on it, and but probably more the title. It actually got me, and but after I read it, it made sense because I kept thinking my mother's Irish and very strong woman, and I could see my mum in there as part of the theme. And my mum was really tough, and but not in a hard way, but just a strong woman. And I got it. And many years later, I was asked by Bob Casper to join the board, become a trustee of the Powerhouse Museum, and which I did. And Anne was on the board, and I never really knew. I just knew her as a lecturer, but then I got to know her a little bit. And she was a writer at the Sydney Morning Herald all the time, and I found her. It's amazing how you have this view of people write something like that. She was the most charming, lovely person. So nice for me to sit down and talk to her, like as a trustee of the Powerhouse Museum. She was interested, well educated, obviously had opinions on everything, but it was a really great conversation to have with her. How much during those periods did other people influence your view, to the extent you're running women's magazines especially, and then later on at the Telegraph, influence your views on how a woman should be represented or the female should be representative? With that big movement that was going on in the 70s and 80s.
Well, I was a part of it. So it affected me too. So I just instinctively know, I think, what women want. That's why I'm an editor.
Why?
Because I just understand them.
But when at the time, it's different now, of course, but at the time, women weren't given a fair shake.
No, we weren't. So we encouraged them to have a go.
But a lot of women just would rather, at the time, just accept the status quo and just look. Why argue? Why go along? I'll just go along with the way it's going.
Cleo always said women had a choice. You should make a choice about what you want to do with your life and apologize to no one. Because we often say, "I'm sorry." Women need to remove the word sorry from vocabulary. So if you make your own choice about what you want to do, if you want to be a mother and raise children but also have a career, fine. If you just want to be a stay-at-home mother, fine. If you want to be a career woman with no children, fine. It's your choice what you do with your life. Make your choice. Don't apologize to anyone and enjoy what you do.
That's very interesting. So, because you covered quite a bit of ground there, Ita, like everything is okay as long as you make the choice positively and you don't apologize for it. So you make the choice, but it doesn't matter what you want to do. It's not a matter of saying, well, it's not good enough if you're just a mum, stay at home.
But if that's what you want,
that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of contextualizing the whole process. Because the problem is some people want to get into a corner and take sides and say, nah, it's not good enough to be it's just a mum.
Too many people try to please everybody And the only person you should be looking to please is yourself. And that's not to say you can't be generous to other people, but it's your life. We're only here once. You can't afford to waste a moment of it. Make a decision about what you want to do, and go forward.
And and do you think that particularly back in the 70s and 80s, it was very judgmental? Because I think it was also judgmental of men at the time too, by the way. And if you didn't, like, I remember, if you didn't go to university, which is the opposite now, but if you didn't go to university, you were not as good as the person who went to university and got a university degree and become a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer or something like that. There was a lot of more judgment back then. Do you think that people like yourself and all the publications have sort of taken a lot of judgment away and made things much more egalitarian today?
Well, I would hope the publications for which I was responsible would have been like that, because it's what I've always believed. It's what I've always believed.
Do you think back some of the amazing women you met during that period? And I was only just thinking of when I knew you were coming in today, and I knew you were coming in for a while now, but when I was thinking about it this morning, I was thinking about Maggie Tabra. Do you think about some of the wonderful people that
Maggie Tabra, Carla Zampatti, Imelda Roach.
Or is Melda still alive?
She is.
Yeah, I think she's
in her 90s.
She's Dom's mother, yes. That's
she
right.
Still comes to Chief Executive Women functions.
Wow. Do you think about how maybe privileged, I don't mean in a monetary sense, but privileged to have been around with those extraordinary women?
Oh, I think it's been a great time to be a woman. I've been part of the evolution of women. It's all changed since I was a girl, and it's been fantastic what we can do, what we can achieve. Many of us have earned significant income that no one could have possibly have imagined that we would have earned when I started work at 15.
But then when you mention the stories about Sir Frank Packer giving you an opportunity and wanting to make sure he kept you, and Kerry not wanting you to go because he appreciated your value, and then someone like Rupert, and we're talking about scions of like industry.
Yes, but I worked hard. I made the money too. It's not all one-sided.
Yeah.
Yes, they gave me opportunities, but I delivered.
And took the opportunities. So because a lot of people don't nail it. They're not after the opportunity. A lot of people just sit back and
opportunities are always there, aren't they? Yeah. You've just got to recognize them and grab them. Don't let them pass you by.
Yeah. What is that ambition that does that, or what is that? Is that a natural instinct that I'm always looking to improve my lot? I'm talking about Ita now.
Well, I think the thing is, people come to me, or they used to, with offers, and I think, yes, I'd like that. And so I'd say yes. And then you think, what the hell have I done? What have I agreed to do? And you think, but I can do this. I can do it. I may have to do some homework. I may have to brush up on something, but that doesn't mean I can't do it.
It's funny.
It's a challenge of opportunity that I like.
What would you say to young women today, for example, who are, young women who are not necessarily want to be journalists, etc., but who are ambitious about some technology that they're trying to build? How do they go about getting to the individuals that somehow you managed to get to make sure that their business can become successful?
But all I did was work hard and deliver the goods. So if you deliver the goods, you're noticed, I think.
But you must have known that I'm going to be a journalist. So the most powerful journalist industry family, for example, is, let's call it one of them anyway, is the Packer family. They've got all these magazines that are wonderful magazines.
No, it was just a natural step for me to take because Dad had worked there.
Oh, right. Okay.
And he knew everybody. He knew everybody. And I knew a lot of people because they were my parents' friends.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean that I could be on familiar first name terms. They were still Mrs. Fenston, Mrs. Shelton Smith, whatever it is. So I was always respectful to older people.
Yeah. Well, do you think that today younger people younger women can have the same opportunities?
Oh, they must be there. Technology is changing the world, and it's a question of making sure you know what technology you're good at, and if you're not good at it, perhaps brushing up your skills and seeing where it's taking you. There's always opportunities. There's always new things happening. You have to be across them.
Ida, how come you're so sharp?
Talk to my brain.
I'm trying to. No, because it's funny.
Actually, I've been classified as a super ager.
A super ager.
Yes, because of my brain.
I wouldn't be surprised because I had on the podcast John Howard about 3 weeks ago, and John's the same. John's recollection of stuff, like, it's amazing what he was recollecting, like some of the things he was talking about, names, places, dates, individuals, times, events, just rolling them out one after the other. I mean, he can't hear very well, so he was shouting at me, but we managed to bring that down on the edit. But other than that, like his ability to respond like yours, it's like sharp, quick-witted. You're actually answering my questions before I finish my question, and you're sort of absorbing the question faster than I can even get the question out. And but what do you put that down to? Because a lot of people these days want to age well, they want to live a long time, the longevity, all that sort of stuff.
I haven't retired.
Okay, nor has John. So what does that mean?
It means you're still using your brain. You're still thinking.
How do you do it? How do you stimulate? What are the stimuli for you? Is it conversations with
Task
people?
at hand. So I'm writing a speech at the moment about giving minds hope. And I'm delivering that at a neurodegenerative conference on Friday. And it's to do with my work, primarily to do with my work with Dementia Australia, where I've worked now since 2008, because my father had vascular dementia. And I was working on it yesterday, and it really challenges your brain to sort of, you think, what else can I add in here? I've got to tell them about hope, the new drugs that offer hope. They're very expensive. They've got serious side effects. But for the first time, we have drugs that will absolutely stop the progression of dementia. So we're on the right track. And for years and years, it seemed that we were never going to find anything to stop the progress of dementia. It's not a cure. It just stops the progression. So that offers the mind hope. So within that heading, I've got to cover lots of things. And I was thinking this morning as I was getting ready to come in here, I thought, I know how I'll end it now. It's because my brain was sort of thinking, how am I going to end this speech? I've started well, and I need to trim the middle, but I've got it all there. I just don't have the ending yet, but I think I've worked it out. So my brain is always busy.
So how long is the speech going to go for? How long?
Half an hour.
Okay, that 30 minutes that's fairly intense.
Yes, it's about 5,000 words.
Yep. And do you break? I'm just curious because similarly, I make lots of speeches. Do you break your speech up into say 5 lots of 6-minute lots? So you'll have a 6-minute section, a 6-minute section, like by 5.
No.
How do you work out how to spend 30 minutes engaging an audience?
I just deliver the speech. I expect them to listen. I don't use PowerPoint because people read the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You haven't got them at all.
Yeah.
They have to listen to me. I have to grab their attention. I have to keep them amused. So you drop something light in the middle, give them a laugh, and then go back to the serious message. No, I don't do 6-minute lots.
You don't structure it like that.
Well, I structure it beginning, middle, and end.
Yes, right.
Call to arms, whatever. It's all in there.
Have you tried to use artificial intelligence to?
I don't know enough about it. There's a guy coming. There's a guy that I'm going to hear on in a couple of days' time, who's going to talk about AI for seniors, and I thought, well, that could be interesting. So I might trot along and hear what he's got to say. But when I'm writing a book, my time is always taken up with writing the book. And now my time is taken up with marketing the book, because it's not enough for an author just to write a book. You've got to market the book. And I try to keep my mind tidy. So my focus is on this book at the moment. And once it's done and it's out there for people to decide for themselves whether or not I've written something that they want to read, I'll then address my need for more information on AI.
So the book you're talking about is this one here, Unapologetically Ita.
That's the one.
So what is this book about now? And why did you write this book? And when did you write it?
I wrote it last year in 2024. So when you're chair of the ABC, you defend the ABC. You have opinions about national broadcasters. You have opinions about political interference. But you don't have opinions about much else, because you have to keep your opinions to yourself, because I didn't want the ABC to be accused of being one way or the other because of a thought I might have had. So you don't express your thoughts as freely as I can now. So once I'd finished my chairmanship of the ABC after 5 years, I thought, I can get my voice back. I can raise issues that concern me. So this is a book that includes areas that concern me. Things about, I never thought I'd live in Australia where people couldn't afford to buy a home in the capital cities. And that's what we've got now. I never thought I'd live in a world which seems intent on destroying itself because people have blinkers on climate change. I mean, how much more do we have to see the climate change? How many warnings do we have to receive from scientists to know that the world is threatened by its climate because of the careless behaviour of us on the planet? It's a human destruction of the planet. And we can't do that. We have to leave the planet in good shape for all the people that come after us. We're all here only once, but it's not our world, is it? It belongs to everybody here and everybody that's coming after us.
It's interesting you call it unapologetically. Do you, during your chairmanship of the ABC, I often, thought about you, and I often thought to myself the difficulty you must have had in terms of issues that were happening around it. Sometimes the ABC was, the issue itself was within the ABC, or alternatively the ABC was commenting on issues in other places where there were real issues. And I used to think to myself, the conflict that must raise in someone's mind if they have a personal view, was it a difficult thing, or was it something you had to consistently and persistently work on to divorce Ita Buttrose's personal view from what ended up becoming the national broadcaster's view? Is that something you have to continually work on?
You don't continually work on it. You just accept that there are limitations to what you can say when you take on the job. And when you've been in the job just a few weeks, you realise how true that is. You just can't, because you'll damage it. And I love the ABC, and I wouldn't want to damage it. So I was very consistent in keeping my thoughts to myself. I might have shared them with the managing director from time to time, but
Apparently so.
they were private. They were private discussions between David Anderson and myself.
But is it therefore difficult? Because when you were the editor of the women's magazines and the women's part of, newspapers, etc., you were quite forthright in your own views relative to how they would be, like women's rights, not so much women's rights, but just being forthright about women generally. You could push those things through. Your ideologies could be seen in the context of whatever it was that you were producing as editor-in-chief. But when you're at the ABC in a chairmanship role, a chairperson's role, you're not able to, your own ideology has to be sort of somewhat suppressed.
Well, publicly, yes.
Yes.
But for instance, I did encourage more women in the newsroom, and that was already underway. And I just let it be known that I supported that idea, and I would I would send encouraging messages on from time to time to certain people. And so you can still do the things you believe in. You just don't make it quite so public.
And would you say that you ever pulled a leaf out of, say, Kerry Packer's book, playbook, so to speak, as chairperson of the ABC? Would you come down to the newsroom and go and see what everybody's doing, like Kerry used to? He used to sort of, to some extent, sort of get involved. You're a cameraman, or you're a journalist. How you going? What are you doing? What you're working on? Did you do that, or was it not really your role?
Not really my role, I don't think. But it's a very big building at Ultimo. You could get lost in it. So I was on the 14th floor, and there were lots of areas below me. And then there was another building alongside, a smaller building, and there were people there. So it was hard to see everybody, but I used to attend events and talk to people. Of course you would, but it's not the same. It's not the same as Consolidated Press was under Kerry Packer.
Yeah, because I guess in some extent Kerry was not the chairperson, but more the owner, the proprietor.
Definitely the owner.
Yeah, proprietor. And you do it the way I want it to be done, so to speak.
Sir Frank used to say to me, "I own the bloody papers, don't I?" "Yes, Sir Frank." "Well, do what I want."
I tell you a funny story. One time I said to Kerry, when he and I were in business together, I said, "Oh, look, Current Affair wants to do an interview with me." I don't know why I was telling him. I was just telling him, just updating him. And he said, "I wouldn't do it." And I said, "Why not?" I said, "Good publicity." He said, "Nah." He said, I wouldn't let a Current Affair interview me. He said, "I wouldn't." I said, "But you're the owner." I said, he said, "Son, I'm telling you, I wouldn't do it." I did it, and I wish I hadn't have. I won't tell you what happened, but I wish I hadn't have. And he said, and when it came up on the thing, he called me up. He said, "What did I tell you?" And he was very,
I mean, that
very
was advice straight from the horse's mouth, and you ignored it.
I know, I ignored it.
Yeah.
Well, I was so hell bent on getting publicity for my business at the time, and it was all new for me, and it was all free. I thought I'm going to take the advantage of the opportunity. I may never get it again, but his advice was correct. And it's funny, what you're saying to me anyway, as a chairperson of an institution. And obviously Channel 9 became an institution, but as an institution, your role is more guidance. What is the role of a chairperson of
strategy?
Strategy, yeah.
Observing the charter, placating governments,
Government interference.
government batting it off.
Do governments ring up, like any type, any stripes? Do governments ring and say, "Listen, no, we're not happy with that story you guys did on whatever it was"?
No, they leak things to the media.
To the other medias, yeah. It's basically letting you know that they're not happy.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? Do you apologise? What do you say?
No, you don't. You don't apologise. We're the national broadcaster.
Yeah, so you don't say anything. You just roll with
The
it.
reason why democracy needs national broadcasters is because they're not interfered with. The government doesn't have a right to tell us what we should do and what we should cover. It's not like commercial media, which might adhere to an advertiser's appeal, so we say. So there's no commercial interference in the ABC.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so is Unapologetically a reference to a period of time where you couldn't say what you wanted to say?
No, it's just, this is it.
It's me. I'm saying it.
That's right.
Like it or lump it.
That's
bad
right.
luck.
Like it or lump it. This is what I think.
I couldn't give a damn, but I need to say this.
No, you don't give a damn. The older you
Don't
get,
apologise.
the older you get, you don't give a damn.
By the way, some people say to me, "You're right." I say, the reason I do what I do because I just don't care. I don't care what anyone thinks. I really couldn't care less. Like, I don't have anything to prove to everybody, to my audience, for example. I don't care. I mean, I want them to have a good, enjoy the interviews, but I don't care so much anymore. When I was younger, I always cared. I was always worried.
I think you just learn to live with it. don't you?
Yeah. Well, you got to roll with it at the end of the day. Can you just give me just a couple of things that you really? It says here, look after your brain. Oh my God, I just turned chapter 5. Look after your brain. Has that got something to do with your experience and role at Dementia Australia?
Well, yes, and now I'm the chair of the advisory committee of the Centre for Healthy Brain Aging. And, people ignore their brain, but we now know that if you look after your brain, we do believe if people looked after their brain and then subsequently did things that were good for the brain, like not getting too obese, like controlling blood pressure, like keeping cholesterol low, like physically exercising, like challenging the brain by making it learn new things, that you can reduce your risk of vascular dementia. We think that's the dementia that people's behavior influences. So if people could modify their behavior, our research tells us that people could reduce their risk of dementia, of vascular dementia. You don't have to get it, but it's up to you to look after your body and hence your brain.
I got to show the camera this because it's a bit scary. Like I didn't have it marked, but I picked it up and just opened up on any page, and it's chapter 5. Look after your brain, page 123, and we're talking about vascular dementia. It's interesting that you should raise that because I might quickly say that vascular dementia is usually caused by your brain not getting enough blood flow, which carries oxygen nutrients, and your neurons start to die off. And I know a little bit about it because dementia is a scary topic for me, because I have it in my family, etc. So it worries me. And as someone who's had a lot of concussions during a long period of time,
football or sport,
boxing, and it worries me a lot. So I've spent a bit of time looking at dementia. And all the various forms of dementia. There's lots of forms of dementia, as you know. And but it is. I read somewhere I heard somewhere the other day. It is now Australia's #1 killer.
It is.
It's overtaken heart attack, cardiac arrest, and we don't. That chapter is an important chapter. We don't pay enough attention to it in Australia. We sort of ignore it.
Well, the government is aware of the caseload. It's 433,000 Australians currently living with dementia, and that figure is expected to double say by 2056 if we don't get a medical breakthrough. Now, I've mentioned the drugs that are offering hope, but there's a long way to go with those. So what we need is an awareness campaign. Awareness, because the research tells us that not enough Australians know about the risk factors. They say that they would modify their behaviour if they knew what they had to do. So I've listed them for you. Exercise, challenge the brain, socially interact with people, challenge the brain with something new that hasn't done before, watch your blood pressure, watch your cholesterol, don't get overweight, drink in moderation, and don't smoke.
Yeah, don't smoke is a big one. And they're all behavioural things, by the way.
Yeah.
We're not talking about anything genetic there.
No. It's just up to people themselves to take responsibility for their brain and their health.
Do you feel as though, to some extent, this book is whilst it says Unapologetically Ita, it's not really about Ita. It's about new movements, not dissimilar to the one that you were part of in the 70s and 80s and 90s in relation to women in Australia, but it's now it's not necessarily about women now. It's about Australians, when I look at a chapter like that, taking control of their life.
Well, it is. It is about you taking control of your life. Yep.
Like you've always done.
Yes, I have.
But and as you said earlier about making choices, but being aware of the choices you make. So when it comes to being in business, you're saying, you make the choice, you go do what you want to do. If you want to be a mother, you be a mother, that's fine. If you want to be a mother and be a working mother, that's fine. If you don't want to be a mother, that's fine. By the way, if you want to have a problem with your brain, you should be aware of these things. If you don't want to have a problem with your brain, you don't want to get dementia, you've got to be aware of these things and make a choice.
Yes, you do. But why would you want to get dementia if you could avoid it?
Yeah. Nobody would. I mean, to me, I would think, and I've said it to my kids, that is the worst thing I could possibly get. as an individual, and I have made a lot of bad choices in my life early on, behaviourally, not these days, but when I'm getting to an age where I can't do those things I used to do when I was younger, but I did make choices,
Like
probably
what?
wrong choices. Sorry,
Like what?
drinking,
Oh,
and I
you can
boxed,
still drink, but
I drank a
moderation.
lot. But I drank a lot. I boxed a lot, like a lot, too much, and I had no idea because my dad was a boxer, and I didn't know that something like that could cause dementia. I didn't even know what dementia was when I was a young guy. I had no idea. And in fact, in those days, if you got hit in the head and you kept going, that was like a badge of honour. In my sort of cohort of people growing up, or if you played football and you didn't come off the field when you'd had been hit in the head, that was a badge of honour. And it's interesting that they're behavioural things, but it's about awareness.
Yes, it is. And so I think brain health has to start when children are young, so that they grow up with these messages ingrained in them to look after your brain. So if you're going out on the bike, put your helmet on.
Yeah.
If you're playing cricket, put a helmet on with a neck guard so you don't get hit by a ball. All of those things.
What would you say to someone then who says, "Oh, we're just turning to a nanny state"? Well, that type of conversation. Like I see it I don't know if you follow the rugby league, but I see it when I hear older patrons of the game say to me, and I don't think this way. Oh, well, in the old days, he wouldn't have come off after he got that big head knock. He would have played on. We would have played on. And this has just turned to a nanny state. What do you say to those people?
Well, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because we now know that if you knock the brain around too much on the football field, you can get dementia. So why wouldn't you want a warning about that? And why wouldn't you come off the field and stop playing for a bit if you did get a bad knock on your head? Nanny state, bull dust, actually.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, but it's. Do you think then, therefore, as a country, we're starting to mature a little bit and stop being so? Because we were that old school, rough and ready. You'll be right. You'll be fine. Get on with it. We're starting to be a bit more intelligent about how we live our lives.
I hope so. I do think so.
And is your book sort of trying to passionately drive that?
Well, the one thing that's hardest of all is to change people's behaviour. People always think it's going to be someone else. It's not going to be them. It's going to be them over there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, with dementia, it doesn't discriminate against anybody. Everybody can be a subject of dementia.
So, I mean, as I said, I don't want to focus just on one chapter because you've got lots of chapters in here, but that one chapter about your brain, looking after your brain, dementia doesn't become a problem just when you get to my age or an older.
No, there's childhood dementia. There's about 27,000 Australians living with younger onset dementia.
Wow. 27,000.
Yes.
And the habits or the behaviour that ultimately can end up in dementia, for example, at an older age, actually start when you're younger. So that awareness program, young people need to read these books. Young people need to become aware of this stuff. They should be going to listen to your Giving Hope to the Mind, your speech. Where's that speech?
Macquarie University.
At the university. And is it part of some department of neurology or something like that, neuroscience?
Well, they have a very big health campus, and they do have a dementia centre of excellence.
Do you do this with so much passion and I could see it, so much passion and energy, because this is Ita trying to give something back to Australia, or is this because it's keeping Ita's brain really going herself and it's actually good for you?
All my health interests are really for the benefit of Australians. I've been in a situation where I've been able to publicise them through the magazines and newspapers that I've edited, the radio programs that I've done, the TV programs that I've done. And I think if you can give back, you should. Life is not just for taking, it's for giving. You have to give back to the community.
And sometimes I think about that, and some of us in the world have been like blessed to come across Sure, we took advantage of opportunities. Sure, we worked hard. I got all that. But we were blessed to have opportunities to meet the Packers or whatever of the world. And as we get older, we tend to feel like we need to pay that forward, give that back. I mean,
Well, I think so.
because otherwise you're being selfish. You're just a selfish person. You want to keep everything to yourself.
But it's good to work with other organisations that have got a mission, like preventing dementia or like improving eye health. All the various things that I'm involved in. But it makes you grow as a person, and it enriches your life because you meet other people who are busy beavering away in these areas, and you think, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I must talk about that. I must tell people about that.
Yeah, it's amazing that you at your stage in life, and you're, I don't know, well, John, I'm not even going to
just a child of 83.
Yes, so that's amazing that you are not only curious about these things, but you are looking at things to enrich your life. You're not sitting back and saying, "Well, I've done it all. I've been this editor and that editor and blah blah blah." I'm independently okay financially. I'm going good. I've met everybody. You've met everybody. You're looking at things to continually to enrich your life.
Yes, why not? As long as you're here.
Yeah, totally. To the moment you're not here, from my point of view. I mean, we were talking about Graham Richardson earlier on, who passed away a couple of days ago. And Richo did his last Sky News cross to Sky News from his hospital bed a couple of days before he passed away.
I believe that. That's the kind of guy he was.
Yeah. And it seems to be the same fabric that you're got in you. People say to me, "Oh, Mark, why don't you slow down?" Well, I don't know. I don't want to slow down, but like, what else am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to sit around at home and watch Netflix all day long. I mean, like, it's good for me. I'm the same. Like, I'm actually selfish in that the reason I do everything I do, and I do a lot of stuff where I don't get paid for it, make any money. I'm just this whole show. Why I do this is because I want people to be entertained by what entertains me. And but at the same time, selfishly, it's good for me because I get to sit in front of Ita Buttrose. I get to sit in front of Graham Richardson. I get in front of John Laws. But if I didn't have this platform, I wouldn't get that opportunity. And I learn something every day from every one of these individuals, or I get reminded of something I've forgotten that's important to remember. I don't get chances to write books like you do. I mean, you're prolific in that you can write. You're a journalist. You know how to do this stuff. I mean, it's hard. It takes, for me to write that, it would take me 2 years. And I go mental trying to do it. So if I don't have that skill, but how important is it to be not selfish in the evil sense, but selfish towards making yourself enriched? How important is that for people to do that? Not just be curious, but do something about it.
Well, it's up to the person. It's up to each individual person. It's not making time for it. It's just making it a part of your life.
But do you think but it's obviously worked for you. Do you think it's a good technique for people to learn from you and maybe do for themselves? It doesn't have to be to the extent you do it, but just continually trying to enrich your mind.
I think so. I mean, well, just try it. Volunteer for something that you wouldn't normally volunteer for. Help out in the community.
Yeah.
There's always people looking for help.
That's for sure. And I think that concept that you raised before about giving back, otherwise we can actually get into that sort of horrible sort of spiral of either apologizing or alternatively whinging. And if you're looking for some way to give back, you stop whinging.
Life's too short to whinge, quite frankly.
That'll go down in that phrase. That'll make the front of our podcast promotion. Life's too short to whinge. I can just see Sammy, our producer, sitting over there thinking about that, and I was trying to write some notes. But you're right. Ita Buttrose said, life's too short to whinge.
Yes.
There's a
it
big
is.
lesson in that one. It's nearly a second heading. Don't whinge.
I'll write
Life's
another
too short.
book.
That's your next mission.
Yes.
And see, that's amazing. Straight up, you said, I'll write another book. That's amazing. Talk about taking opportunities. Thanks very much, Ita Buttrose. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you very much. I've enjoyed it.